Hi, and welcome back to What and Beyond. Another great episode, another fantastic guest lined up for you this week. It brings me great pleasure to welcome Bianca Agoston onto the line to share her experiences. So Bianca's, again, somebody I've known for a long time now. It must be, 5-6 years, Bianca. So great to get you actually on the show. I know that over the last 4 years, you've been on a really interesting journey. It's actually really relevant for a few of my clients who are working in large organizations that have numerous entities all over the globe, who are also dealing with a large implementation of an ERP or a CRM. And so I thought it'd be really timely to get you on the show to discuss your experiences and dig a little deeper into the work that you've been doing over at Hilti. So welcome, Bianca.
Thank you, Wayne. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. It's great to finally get you on the show. I know we have some great questions and discussion lined up as always, but as is typical for our guests, our typical intro, if you can let us know who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it.
Hi, everyone who's listening. My name is Bianca Agoston. I'm the Process Automation Program Manager for Hilti, for the global finance community, and also slowly but surely beyond the finance as well. And why do I do? I guess I share that with a lot of people in this space, in the automation space. It's a passion for process excellence and ease of flow-to-notice operations. That's something what I want as an end user, as a customer, as a client. And so I'm very passionate to bring that then to our employees and also to our Hilti customers.
Well, great to have you on the show, of course. You mentioned a couple of things there that I'd quite like to dig in straight away. So I guess knowing a little bit more about your previous background. So maybe let's talk about where you were before Hilti, even where you were before ISG, and then let's talk a little bit more about what you're up to now. So give us a little bit more insight into your days before Hilti.
Yeah, with pleasure. So started around 10 years ago, actually. It was with IBM back in Hungary. And it was an operational finance analyst role, which I always think is a good start for then people to then progress into the process automation, process improvement space. And just thanks to the daily role, I started to see, processes, opportunities for improvement. And I got a lot of encouragement to then pursue these opportunities, which was a wonderful thing to experience really so early into the career and to be able to have such a big impact. And something that really left the mark with me is being able to make updates to the website itself where the customers were doing the ordering, and some of the categories were very unclear back then. So we're able to change that, and for me to be able to be an agent of that change and to have witnessed it firsthand how just updating a few wording on the website can mean that the operations for us flow much more effortlessly. That really stayed with me, and it was a great experience, and that sort of followed me through, I think, the journey on. Then I came to the UK in 2015, joined yet another finance operational role with a few projects there as well. And that's when RPA came as a citizen development pilot, funny enough. So I've started the journey with RPA as a citizen developer part-time. So I got training in AA and was a BA and a developer. And from that role onwards, I joined ISG for around 2 or so years, which of course was a great experience and learned a lot of different clients, traveled across Europe, seen a lot of different ways of doing automation projects. And then the opportunity with Hilti came up, and it was an absolute pleasure to be able to get all that wealth of experience and bring that and lead a program on the client side.
I think there's loads to dig in there. So I guess you've been Hilti now for 4 years. It's really interesting because even I learned something there, that your original background was all around finance. And I really resonated with the slight tweak on the website. So I'll take you back to my earlier days at O2 when we were driving channel shift, would you believe? So we'd set up a rather large online chat and digital messaging capability. And what we realized is obviously customers are creatures of habit, right? Everyone, and this is customers, it's employees, so it's really relevant even to the RPA and automation story in general. People do what they do, right? People don't often like change. And that includes how they contact a brand, how they contact brands in general. And so what we realized is obviously you have to change someone's habit. In order to change someone's habit, you can nudge them, and you can nudge them by those tiny tweaks on things like your website. So, what you were saying there earlier on around, making slight tweaks and seeing change, I've absolutely lived through that myself as well. So well, yeah, that story itself, your initial forays really resonated. And it's still something now I talk about fondly, about nudging customers to do things differently by how something looks, sounds, feels on your website. So I'm a big believer in that. Talk to us a bit more then about the 4 years that you've been at Hilti. You mentioned a few things there, and one that really stuck out was started in finance and now are starting to go into the rest of the business. So I'm sure there's loads that we can dig into here. So why don't you give us a bit more background on what you've been doing over the last 4 years?
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of work around laying the groundwork, really doing a few pilots, hiring for all the right roles within the automation team, which is based off both finance and IT employees, and we're in 2 locations. So the team here in Manchester and also the team over there in Kuala Lumpur. And we were, scaling, industrializing within the finance, amassing pipelines, building a key relationship, which definitely after COVID accelerated significantly. And on the back of the good work and obviously just what automation, I think it's something that it's a technology that sells itself. We started to get a lot of approaches from outside of finance as well. And so we felt that slowly but surely we're coming to the maturity where we can really service, advise, start this conversation with the other departments as well, and work out how would then this, enterprise-wide model look like for automation at Hilti.
Interesting. So it's a global role then, I guess, that you have right now. You mentioned Kuala Lumpur, which is funny because the last time we caught up, I'm fairly certain you either were still in Kuala Lumpur or you just got back. It was one of the two anyway. So now I know a little bit more about why you were in Kuala Lumpur, and clearly it wasn't all for pleasure. It was visiting the team over there. So how are you following the sun? How did those 2 operations work side by side?
Yeah, it's a very good question. That's something that I picked apart recently in one of my MBA papers as well. The working nature between 2 teams in such different geolocations, sort of what are really sustainable and also ethical ways of teams with 8 hours time difference really working together. So it's been established this way from the very beginning. So we've got quite a few years of experience under our belt. So basically when we come online around 8-9 o'clock, that's when the team is just about finishing the work day around 4-5 o'clock. So we're both trying to accommodate each other, but for the greater part, I would say there's the IT colleagues kindly sort of stay on for a few hours longer, and that's how we can conduct our synchronous meetings. And that's a very big learning for me about working in this style, is that these 2 RPA teams, they really need to be collaborating so closely. We're working together daily. We're one team really just in 2 different locations. We need to be on the same call. So maybe I would say there is that myth, or there's that illusion that these 2 teams can work asynchronously, but I would say the nature of the job is very much together on calls. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Excellent. And as someone who has a 6-hour time difference to you right now, and it's my morning and your end of day. And of course, all of my UK contacts, family, friends, I work this 6 hours. It's not quite 8 hours, but it is 6 hours. So I'm a living, breathing proof that it is definitely possible to work in that type of environment. But yeah, it was always a struggle back in the UK having to work with clients and vendors who were in California with the 8-hour time difference. And certainly when you're trying to get things like webinars and all hand calls and things, it is always very difficult the longer that time difference is. So it's great to see that you've got that working. I mean, how are your roles split then between Kuala Lumpur and the UK? Do you have the same roles just in different places, or do you have different roles in different places? How do you split the responsibilities? And I guess you govern all of it. So you govern all of it from the UK, right? Would that be right?
Well, depends on what you mean by governance in this context. So maybe
Are you responsible overall for the success of both teams? I guess would be maybe that's the right question.
Yeah, as the program manager, I would absolutely say so. And in terms of roles and responsibilities, so the team here is business facing. So we're the gate to business, their requirements, their needs, their pain points. So we do a lot of workshops with the business. Early on, it was a lot around RPA awareness, what RPA can and cannot do. And I'm very confident that there's a very good understanding now out there with the business of, what this technology is, partly of our good work, but also just, I feel automation is coming from every channel, and, it's hard to almost hide from the information. So that's a really good base to work with, and a really good community that we can really have meaningful exchanges, conversations with. And there's a lot of passion, drive, and people usually share in that passion and interest to want to improve operation, make it as efficient as possible, and really as least manual as possible. So it's a wonderful group of people to work with. And also the business analyst role is here, and all the very versatile requirements that, come with that role. So that's business case assembly, making sure that they're accurate, the visiograms, as is to be processes, documentation, and also the team does the UAT preparation and the UAT assisting the business to testing. And then in KL, we have more the IT technical facing role. So we have all the delivery team, the development team. And I know in some companies it's split into two, not in our case, but also the support is done out from the KL office.
Excellent. So we have not necessarily the same roles in both locations. So that helps.
Yeah,
you mentioned IT. Superb. And you mentioned IT a couple of times there. And you mentioned RPA. So I guess I'd be really interested in figuring out, when you are solutioning these 2B, what are the components that go into your thinking? So are you thinking it's RPA is the solution? That's my hammer, where are the nails? Or are you really thinking about the process? You're thinking about the outcome that you want to achieve. And then you as a team are working alongside IT to say, right, what's the best way of us being able to achieve this? Or are you, has this process already gone through IT and it's like, hey, this is too small, we ain't touching this, we're going to concentrate on some of our bigger programs, which was, the original reason why RPA started to grow in popularity, because the changes that were being made to processes were just not necessarily on IT's radar. So I'm really interested to kind of hear how you're working with IT and how you are bringing solutions to bear, and whether you are a hammer looking for a nail or whether you have a toolkit.
That is an excellent question, actually very relevant in the Hilti context, and also very relevant because we recently worked out a framework on all this, which we're now looking at operationalizing really. So we established a few levels of hierarchy, starting with obviously our core ERP systems that takes absolute priority. And even before touching the ERP, in some cases, we understand pain points are just a matter of not being aware or not having have yet implemented a business best practice that's available, that's, shared by the GPM. So we're also trying to coordinate and help the business within business with, whatever information we may have to help them adopt and ease the operations without needing to touch technology. And then once we come to technology, so ERP systems take priority. We've got quite a lot of productivity add-ons within Hilti, like Blackline, Sorella, Concur, all the rest of it. These also take priority prior to RPA, which I fully share. These are obviously solutions that have been developed for many years, if not decades, off the shelf, available, targeting a very specific pain point. So I'm fully support in that. And these vendors, of course, have their own roadmaps for the many months and years to come. And then if an opportunity is in sort of service in either of these categories, then at that point, we look what sort of toolkit is available, sort of these off-the-shelf opportunities. And if nothing, then that's when it really comes to us at RPA. And based on this model, we own that opportunity because we want to do right by the business. So we look at it through the lens of RPA, but also at the lens of what's available on the market. So that's very much in the IT hands to find the right tool for the business problem at hand, sort of accompanied with the information that the BA team is establishing what's the business case behind this opportunity. Of course, we just need to be realistic. If it's a low business case, we unfortunately just won't be able to necessarily go through all the many hoops of bringing in potentially new technology or asking our in-house software development team to do something about it. But what we are committed to based on this model and what we're going to operationalize is to close that loop, that feedback loop, and get back to the business always as to, can we help in this specific sense? And if yes, how that's going to look like, and what's a rough timeline on that?
One of the things that I jotted down, I haven't heard it today, but when we caught up previously, was power users. So can you talk to us a little bit about power users? Because you haven't mentioned that today, but I know they're quite important for the work that you do. And so I'm really interested in A, what a power user is, and B, what role do they play in all of this?
Yes, that's a program we're very passionate about because it puts the Hilti employees the Hilti talent at the center. And it's actually a program that's nominated for a finance award internally. So we're really hoping to make some good wins there as well. So this is essentially our take on citizen development, if you wish, but also in a much more restricted sense. So we decided at that point when we were launching the program to find that technical finance talents, which is very much out there on all levels of the organization. So recruit them, get them together, give them the training, the upskilling needed within RPA, our tool of choice, and then to be able then to enable the regions for them to be giving local regional bots for their select entities, as opposed to what us as a global team more so do is trying to identify opportunities that would benefit the greater community. So at any one point in time, we're looking at pushing the process to 40, 60 entities even, versus with a power user, your scope is much smaller. So, one of our predefined expectations or predefined notions was that way they will be able to progress quicker as well with the tool rollout. And most importantly, there's that job enrichment and getting ready for the future ways of working. So we started a year ago with the program, and we've started seeing the first few robots going live, and we have 3 cohorts. So that's 16 very talented and passionate people within the finance organization who are either going through training at the moment or have been fully trained and now at the stage of finding their local regional opportunities and developing the bots.
Interesting. Now, one of the things that I have seen historically with power users, citizen developers, is a few things. But the first one that always comes to mind is continued delivery of value. And what I mean by that is, you get these power users, you maybe give them a bit of training, they develop and find process number 1, and then you never see them again. And so when you start to think about whether or not there has been a good return on the investment that you've made, because, if you do this right, you give them time, you give them training, you give them access to tools and systems, and you give them a bit of license to, automate work. So there's a lot of give. And then if the give back is, one process that saves 2 hours a month, you start to question that investment. And there is always that worry, that risk. Do you think you're doing anything different? You said you've been doing this for about a year now. Is there any hints, tips, things that you've seen, things that you do where you think, actually, you know what? The reason why this will never be a one and done is because of X. And again, I don't know whether there is any golden nuggets that you have been thinking about, either consciously or subconsciously, to ensure that there is a continued drive of value coming from your power users. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Quite a few things come to mind. So first of all, we defined a couple 100 hours per year that we're hoping to realize. So that's sort of a cutoff threshold, and that's voiced within the training plan. So power users are aware that they need to look for these opportunities that would qualify for the effort that they would undertake and the global organization would undertake. Another thing that I would definitely recommend everyone and work well for us is the governance comes first, the team's established, and then start a few years later, because then you can leverage everything that was built on the the full-time team and all the cornerstones that are already in place. And so 2 things in specific. One is the pipeline that we asked them to build. So there's around 60 processes. It's a very dynamic picture. So processes come and go because we have a lot of other productivity tools. And as I was saying earlier, sometimes do take priority. So it's very much a moving picture, but it's inspiration for everyone. They can just go in there, look what other regions are doing. We're motivating them to collaborate between each other. Or sometimes it's the same process, but performed in different systems. So again, that's a good opportunity to collaborate together.
That's great. I mean, some good things in there. I'm sure I could pick out just a couple of additional questions. Where are your power users based? And I'm guessing it's not in the UK or Kuala Lumpur. You mentioned regions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're sitting in the business offices, SSCs are out in the market organizations. So all across the world, really, we may have 2 people from the same region, but otherwise we're actually, with the 3rd cohort, we were able to cover across the globe. So we have someone from the France team, Germany, US, A1, A2, APAC region. We've got people from Meta, so it's really a beautiful experience in that sense as well, bringing the community together, and it facilitates them to be able to form these working groups, which is something we've really started promoting. Sort of the power user program managers were saying that was a big key success factor, again, to highlight, is to not put people in a silo, not leave them alone, don't let them sort of experience this whole upskilling or early stage on their own, but rather couple up with people, and that gives them opportunity for a sounding board and just ask questions and troubleshoot quicker. People very likely have experienced the same, teething problems, issues, so they can reassure each other, and sort of just the upskilling time then shortens and shortens with every interaction that they take in this like body system.
And just thinking about that training of these power users, and I'm just thinking of at least a couple of clients that I have in and around my working day at the moment who may or may not benefit from this type of approach. How did you identify a good power user? Did they put their hands up and say, hey, this is me, I want to do it? This is kind of my first question. My second one is this the only thing that they do? So is this now their job, or is this a bolt-on? And if it's a bolt-on, how do you make sure that they have enough time and support in order to deliver those, 100 hours or whatever it is that they have a target against?
Mm-hmm. Excellent question. So answering the first one, first things first, I would say there's a really good network of managers, but also process experts who know their community really well. And that's something I love about the global process manager role at Hilti, how they're also the leaders of their community. And there's just so much energy and so much love put into that part of the role very specifically. So I think there's a good knowledge, good awareness. That was my understanding. People almost immediately knew who that talent is within their organization, and they almost were looking for opportunities for them to showcase that and to learn that, also to give back, to give something to the organization. So there wasn't sort of a need to try and, turn every stone and find these people. And also through the RPA program, something that we also promote is into these regional process roles where, for example, said that it would be great to bring in talent with some sort of technical understanding, technical awareness, if it comes to hiring externally or bringing new talents into the organization. So that would be my feedback on that as to their utilization against the RPA program. So the recommended percentage is around 30 to 60%. We say we're flexible. We understand there's, as you say, operational duties to be undertaken, which during month-end closing, for example, definitely takes priority. But what we've also seen that sort of 15, 20%, so essentially less than one a day, time utilization doesn't necessarily work, especially not early on when you're upskilling, because you learned something, you figured something out, more problems then arise, more questions arise, and then you have to put tools down, and then you're picking it back up again 7 days later, and it just takes a lot of time to get into it and get the wheels going. So again, a really good solution to that in part is working in groups, and so you can just sort of shorten that time to solve problems or get into things again. But even that being said, definitely the more time, the better. If it could be a part-time role, that would be excellent. And it's essentially up to the regions as well and regional management as to how much of a priority this program takes. And that, of course, is influenced by how many opportunities they see on the pipeline or how they see this directly or indirectly benefiting the region in terms of operational excellence and efficiency gains.
Superb. I mean, to be fair, I think we could talk about this particular topic and your experiences in just this one area for at least another episode. I have too many questions, and I'm worried that I'm going to get us down a rabbit hole if I continue to ask them. So I'm going to stop there. Of course, if anybody wants more information, then I'm sure you'd be willing. And I know that you're a member of Women in Tech and that you are a social butterfly on platforms like LinkedIn. And so I'm sure you'd be happy for anybody else who's got any additional questions in this type of area to at least, discuss, right? We don't all have all the answers ourselves. Often what works for one organization doesn't necessarily work for another, but it sounds like you've got something that's working for you, which is great. I need to wrap up the episode. We need to wrap up the episode. I'm just thinking about time here, but I do have one more question. I always like to have a little look about the future. And, we've mentioned RPA, we've mentioned core platforms, obviously mentioned, global rollout, citizen dev stroke power user. So we've gone through a lot already. What's next for you guys? You kind of did allude to the fact that you're branching out of finance into other, so I guess that's probably one area. But are there any new technologies that you're thinking about? Are there any new ways of working, any new departments that you're desperate to get in to help provide that process excellence skill set that you all have? Just two minutes on where you think the future's going for you and Hilti.
Yeah, but definitely branching out in a lot of different direction. Two key areas would be beyond finance and also beyond RPA, so in the intelligence decision-making space. So we are now tasked to, there's a lot of support behind that and tasked to look for a few good pilots within the organization to try and test the sort of the new tools out there in the intelligent automation space that may or may not be chatbots or any sort of communication intelligence. That's something I'm really passionate about. And one use case in specific that I'm pursuing right now is the team mailboxes, which is something I remember was tasked to do and wanted to improve already back at my IBM days 10 years ago. So I feel like it's just come full circle, and that's what I'm really personally drawn to and passionate about in that space. In the very near future, if not the present already, but early days, is definitely, as you were saying, new ways of working. So we're migrating to Jira. We're starting to use Jira initially for our team structure organization and doing these agile ways of working and all the scrums and ceremonies. So we're all learning the ropes there, and that's been a very interesting journey. And of course, Jira as a tool has the potential then to store all our roadmaps and process opportunities. So there's a lot to uncover there as well. We want to look into process and task mining. Of course, that always goes hand in hand. So understand what the tools in-house can do for us in that space. And in terms of departments, very passionate about, helping the customer. So I'm interested in market reach, customer service, and likewise with IT, with, our internal customers. So all of us employees, if we can whip something up there to ease the very repetitive and then sometimes admin heavy workload, then that'd be great.
Amazing. So 4 years in, still lots more to do, it sounds like. So good luck with that. And with that, I think we'll draw the episode to a conclusion. So Bianca, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with me and of course the audience. Thank you, the audience, for listening. And we will hopefully see you again for another episode of Bots and Beyond in the next few weeks.